Hello and welcome to another great interview for Indie Author Fringe, Frankfurt Book Fair 2017. And I am so excited about this interview. These are two people I have been watching from afar for a very long time with enormous admiration. And I simply don't know how they do everything they do. They operate at every level of the books business. They've been around for a long time. Between them, they have incredible experience, inspirations, information, insights to share. And they're going to be bringing all of that to us over the next 45 minutes or so. They are, and they will need no introduction to some of you, but I know that there are new indie authors arriving all the time, and you may not have heard of Kristine Kathryn Rusch and Dean Wesley Smith. Hello, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
So great to have you here. And of course, you're not only amazing indie authors, both of you, and now booksellers also, but you are married to each other. I think that's maybe what I admire most of all. You managed to be in business together and do your books side by side, and still you're still here and still smiling.
A very large house. A very large house.
Very good. Okay, well, let's just start. I think let's talk. You're always doing so much, so just tell me a little bit. I know without even asking that you're going to have projects coming on board, and new books to talk about, maybe new courses or whatever. Just tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, and then we'll go back to the beginning and where it all began. But first, what's coming up in the next couple of months?
Well, let me start because I'm doing a couple of experimental things. I just released a book in my Diving Universe series in September called The Runabout, and we did a normal, what we call a stealth release. We just put it out there, so there's that, and then we're doing kind of a traditional publishing release through our publishing house, WMG Publishing, for my novel that I write under the name Kris Scott, called The Protectors. And that one, we're going to experiment with all kinds of promotion stuff. So I would suggest that indie authors watch my blog off and on for the next 6 months, because we're going to kind of evaluate how this worked and that didn't work and this did work. And you can come to kriswrites.com. That's K-R-I-S writes.com on Thursdays. And I try to have it up London time, about 9 in the morning London time, on Thursdays, so that it should discuss that and other things. I always discuss what's going on in the business.
You see, straight away I want to ask you, is the reason for the two different approaches that you want to look and see what difference it actually makes, or why are you taking two such drastically different approaches to two books?
Well, the first one, it's a long series, and so we've just always kind of done a stealth release. We've done pre-orders and let people know, and people in my newsletters know, but that's about it. That's kind of how we've been doing most of our books, is just putting them out there. And this one, we've been planning it like it's D-Day. I mean, we've been doing it for, what, a year?
A year, at least a year.
Saying we're going to try this and we're going to try that. We're going to try this and see if this still works in 2017 and if this doesn't work anymore. And so we're just kind of...
Even changed the title halfway through the process.
We did. We changed it about 2 weeks ago. I blogged about that.
Yeah, well, I'll be watching the blog with great interest to hear how it goes, because of course it is so interesting. What works one year doesn't work the next, and people move as well. The community moves. It hears about people who are having success doing something, and then a lot of people jump on board and try to see, does that work? So it'll be interesting to see, if you've done a whole range of things, how will you evaluate which actually led to the success that I no doubt will happen?
Well, some of it will be pretty obvious. When you do, for example, a BookBub, you can pretty much see the result almost immediately. But some of it is just going to be impressions, and we won't know. We'll just kind of get a sense overall, and that's kind of what we're looking for, is you know, if we do 18 different things, will it pay off, or will it just lie there?
Yeah, will it make a lot of difference for all that extra work? I mean, that really is the question that a lot of indies are asking themselves about marketing and, you know, how to make that happen. And what about you, Dean? What are you up to?
Well, I want to say one thing about that. One of the attitudes that we have with the publishing company and with our books and stuff are long term. We're always thinking out long term. So that's why we can experiment like this and not have all of, you know, it's not life or death that one book succeeds or doesn't succeed. Our thinking is always, what can we do for next year? And what can we do for the following year to make it better? We're always thinking long term. That probably has to do with the fact that we've both been in publishing for 40 years almost. Yeah, I know we are that old. Basically, I'm writing all the time. I have my own magazine, Smith's Monthly, which comes out every month, and it's only full of my stuff, full novel and a bunch of short stories every month. But what we're doing more than anything else are workshops right now. Having a great time with workshops. We started them about 4 or 5 years ago now, and they've built into quite a kind of almost a university school type of thing. We didn't intend that, but we do 12 online workshops a month. And then we also have an entire thing on Teachable, which has 20 or so lectures and a number of other workshops that you can take at your own pace, as well as the monthly ones where I actually give feedback on homework that's turned in all the way through the 6-week workshop. And so they cover everything from craft to the business of writing and how to do sales copy and things like that.
I love that you're actually taking homework and giving responses, because I think, you know, an online course, we hear a lot about online teaching and online courses, but to my mind, a course that doesn't have some kind of interactive isn't actually a course. It's just a kind of fancy book, really. It's a multimedia book. In order to really teach, you gotta get it down there into the weeds and see what people are doing and give them some feedback.
Yeah, on the next one, the one that's starting on the 18th of October, is a covers workshop where the publisher of WMG Publishing, Alison Longuera, who's also a master graphic designer,
award-winning graphic designer.
Yeah, she literally will do a back and forth with each of the students in that cover. Is a branding of science fiction, is the one that we've done, or we're doing on the 18th. And she will end up giving them a template that they can then use for their work. She works with the author and gets them a template for a cover that they can create a series, and she helps them create series. And so it's very back and forth, and very, very much feedback oriented.
I'm not sure if it'll be full by the time this runs, but you can always check, because sometimes it surprises me, you know, that people don't always sign up for something that would be so cool. Yeah. Where would they go? Go
to email me at dean.wmgworkshops@gmail.com.
Fantastic, thank you. And thank you so much for your very generous giveaway, which is running in concurrence with this interview. But let's move now back to when you started, because one of the reasons we were so excited to speak to you is that I don't think we have, you know, because of the two of you, and you've each worked, you've done collaborations together, but you also have your own very individual styles and series and all sorts of different series of books. You're doing the teaching now. You've also taken on 3, is it, physical bookstores? So let's go back right to the beginning. How did you get into this crazy business we call publishing?
Well, let me, I always wanted to write. I think I came out of the womb wanting to tell stories. And so, you know, I sold my first nonfiction at 16. I wrote for the high school column for the newspaper. And so I've been on the fringes of this for a long time. And then I made a living as a nonfiction writer, and I was a journalist. And it wasn't until I met him when he said, "Why don't you just go full time with the fiction?" And I said, "I don't have to get a real job." And he said, "Yeah, fund it." And so I did. And we, with, you know, his help, I switched. That was where I came in. And then I also ended up editing the company. We started a publishing company.
Called Pulp House.
I'll let him talk about that in a few minutes. But then I started editing, and then I ended up editing the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, and I've come back to editing a little bit. So I still do that, and then we have all the other stuff that we do, and yeah, it's just been. It's hard to encompass all those years.
Absolutely.
She doesn't like to count things.
No, I don't.
I'm a counter. She's in somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 to 160 novels out, not counting the 1,000 short stories that she publishes continuously. And she's been in every one of the major genre magazines, the Dell magazines, Hitchcock's, Queen, Asimov's Analog, and she's won the awards, and she's the only person in history to ever been in those magazines, all 4 of them in the same year, and actually won 3 of the awards in one year. Yeah, from the magazine for the best short story in the magazine. And so
thank you for telling us all that, because she never would have.
She would never.
I never do that. That's all back there. I'm going this way.
Yeah, we're both going forward, but I do counting.
And he does. He keeps track, and thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we're both about, I'm gaining on close to 200 novels now by doing a novel a month on my own magazine, and we're both in the over 200 million, over 20 million, 200 million. That'd be nice.
That'd be nice.
20 million books in
will.
print. Yeah, I think I count mine. I'm at 23 million books in print now.
And I don't count mine.
And she didn't count hers, but she's in that range too.
Incredible achievement, absolutely amazing. And I take, if I had a hat, I'd be taking it off. I think it's just amazing what you managed to do, because
it's a lot of years. It's a lot of years. That's really the key. You just hang on and keep going and keep writing and having fun with it, and that's the real key.
Yeah, you have to have fun with it.
You got to have fun. If you don't have fun, it becomes work.
A job. And
you don't do it anymore.
Go get a job that'll pay you regularly, that doesn't have all the hassles if you want to be, fighting it. But writing should be fun. It's not brain surgery. Yeah. Nobody will die if you do it wrong.
Yeah.
But talk to me a little bit about how some of the changes you've seen in the business, because it was very different when you started out, right?
Oh yeah, I can do that. It's a completely different business now. There's still the vestiges of the old traditional side that a lot of authors still believe that that's the best way to go, but the indie side is as far as I'm concerned, the only true good path now. Because you have control of your own work. You can make a lot more money than you ever can in traditional publishing, and they don't take all of your copyright. You can hold your copyright and continue to reinvigorate it over decades and years. Where in the modern traditional world now, they take everything from you and control it, and then often don't do what you want and leave you on the sidelines, and it takes forever. I mean, can you imagine a traditional publisher that could put out a book a month from me? No, it's not possible. And yet, that's what I like to do. I like to write that. And so it's one of those kinds of things where this new world is not even the same anymore. And what's really the difference is writers are in control now. Where we weren't in control literally 10 years ago. Now we're in control. And that feels wonderful from a person who lived in the old world and existed in the old world and wrote a lot of books in the old world. I love this new world of being in control. I used to really hate that old world of where someone was always telling us what to do and when to turn it in and how to rewrite it. And now it's ours. We writers are in control.
I must say, I completely agree. That's what I absolutely love as well, and I think it's just invaluable. And I'm not saying that this way is the easy way or anything like that, but you do have that at the end of the day, and it really is, as I say, beyond all precious. But I came to you originally, Dean, through your Sacred Cows, and you were just talking so much sense, I thought, from my perspective. I agreed with every word of it. And I've always been interested in your approach to, what was called in the traditional word subsidiary rights, whereby people think they can't actually sell their translation rights or their TV and film or any of those kinds of rights themselves, that you have to. That's one of the things you have to have a publisher for. So can you tell people
Mm-hmm.
that actually you don't need to have an agent.
He's looking at me.
Yeah.
Because I just wrote a blog last night that'll go probably up when this is running. About that, because I handle my own negotiations. I do all of my own stuff. I don't have an agent, and it's becoming so clear to me how much an agent gets in the way now. Let me talk just briefly about agents and say that, they did have their place before the internet. They really did, especially when you were selling foreign rights or rights in translation, because they had contacts in the other country. And then they were able to, they knew the publisher, or they could hook up with somebody who did. And it made sense. It doesn't make any sense now. In fact, all that happens when you have an agent who handles your work is they get an email. They field your emails for you, and they vet the publisher. They don't even, unless you are a #1 New York Times bestseller, they're not going to go promote your work at Frankfurt. They're not going to go to the London Book Fair with a sign saying, buy your work, because you're not J.K. Rowling. You're not Stephen King. Those are the people that they promote if they're lucky enough to have them as clients. They don't promote you. And what makes it worse is that they dumb down your contracts. There's two things they do. They dumb down your contracts, and they take off that there's a term limit that you should always have with a traditional publishing company. Agents take it away so they can continue to earn on your publication unlimited amounts of time. Because if you have a term limit, you can fire them and then do it yourself or hire somebody else. The other thing is that, and that was the focus of my blog, because I just got paid in September for some translation rights, and I had finalized the deal in June. And I've had this happen before, but we are doing a Kickstarter for Pulp House, which was the business that we used to have, and now we have a magazine coming back. And I was digging in all the old photos and everything, so I was kind of stuck in the 1990s in my head. And I went, when I sold translation rights in the 1990s, I'd signed the contract, and then a year later, minimum, I'd get the money, if then. If then. And sometimes, agents pocket the money. They steal the most from what we call subsidiary rights, because writers don't know when it's coming. But the money goes from the publisher to the foreign agent in the country, who then eventually sends it to the US agent, who then eventually sends it to the writer. So even if they're all honest along the food chain, you're not going to get your money until 8 months to a year after you finalize the deal, where I got it in 2 months. So, and plus I got 20% more because I didn't have to pay the agents. Also,
when you do it yourself, the contracts are simpler.
Yeah.
With translation stuff. You're really surprised when you see a translation contract that's been through the grind of an agent, and then you see what actually comes direct from the publisher to you. And with this new world now, we're publishing books all over the world in English. And so everybody has a chance to see them. And that's how you get found, is that somebody in say, Germany, or sees a book and goes, that would be perfect for my line, and they read it in English. And so then they contact the author. And in the old days, they would never contact the author. They had no way to. They would contact whoever the publisher who'd give them to the agent. Now they go direct to the author, because we all have the contact pages, the contact links on our websites. And they Google the author and go, oh, I can contact them right here, and click, and they contact us. And the question they always ask is, who's your agent? And which is kind of silly, because they've already contacted you. You're the person who controls the rights. So you just say, I don't have one. I handle this myself. And then this is essential for any negotiation you do as a writer. Do it in email. And print up the emails. Don't lose them. Don't do it by phone, because there are certain jurisdictions in the United States and other places where an oral conversation does count as binding. So you don't want to do that. You want to be, besides, writers are generally introverts, and they can feel bullied or uncomfortable and agree to something that they wouldn't normally agree to if they didn't have time to take a look at it on paper. You take your time and do it and go back and forth. It's really simple. Yeah, and they will approach you in English for the most part. I've gotten approached in Spanish a couple of times, which is a language I speak, and it wasn't a big deal. But there's such a thing as Google Translate, so you can at least look at what they're asking. Well, actually, under the Berne Copyright Convention, which all of us, almost every country in the world has signed, the contracts have to be in the language.
The contracts
have to be in the language of the author. So
but
there's nothing scary.
The contact sometimes will be
in another language.
In another language, and you just write back and say, do you speak English? And then it'll go back and forth from there. They'll find somebody who can type in broken English for you.
That's right.
And he's right. The contracts have to be in English.
There's another aspect about this too. When we both dropped our agents, which were actually at different times, it became startling the amount of contacts we got that we were never seeing, that the agents were literally blocking.
They were rejecting them, or they didn't like working with that person.
It's only $1,000. They won't be interested. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm interested. You know, $1,000 deals turn into bigger deals, but they were blocking them. And the minute we got rid of the agents, which has been a decade or so now, or more, wow. We started making more money. We started getting more ancillary deals and more Hollywood offers and more everything, all the way down the line. It just was instantaneous how much they were blocking.
So I don't have to ask whether you recommend indies to go it alone. It sounds like you're very much saying that is.
Go it alone.
The indies should go it alone, but they should have backup. Mm-hmm. And the backup can be, you know, they should have a group of attorneys that they consult with if they're feeling uncomfortable. And other writers, and Dean and I answer questions
all the time.
You know, and we have our blogs and everything else. But it's up to indies to learn copyright, contracts, and negotiation. I know writers hate negotiating. I have a book called, you know, How to Negotiate Anything, because I used to hate negotiating. I'm now better. I learned it from him, and I'm better at it.
In publishing
than he is in
yes.
person. He still is the master of negotiation. But me on paper, and there are times when
she does things that I just kind of go, what?
No, and they'll go away. I'm like, yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah.
And then they never do, you know, they come back with sometimes I get things that I'm like, really? You agreed to that? Okay. But, you know, it's a learning process, just like learning to write. And it's scary. I know it's scary, but
you got nothing to lose.
You need to learn this stuff anyway. Even if you decide to ignore our advice and get an agent, how do you know if they're doing a good job if you don't understand this stuff? Yeah. You don't.
You have to sign the contract. If you're signing something you don't understand, or some, you know, English major somewhere out of a college who became an agent is telling you how to sign a legal document,
which they shouldn't.
You deserve what you get, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, because it's illegal in this country for people without law degrees to actually negotiate contracts, and yet in the book field, agents do it all the time. Absolutely. And they get away with it. So far, there's been a few cases come down where they're trying to crack down on that. And if that happens, it'll kill the agency world because there are very few of the big, unless there are the big agencies that actually have legal departments. But agents can't be on the phone negotiating a contract. That's 100% illegal under agency law in this country. And yet in publishing, they do it all the time. And they have a degree in English to be an agent, and they're not regulated in any way. They're not regulated on the money. They're not regulated on anything. They can keep the money and nobody can do a thing about it. And it's really scary. It's become bad.
I think it always was bad.
Yeah.
We just aware
noticed.
Of it.
Yeah, because we took control of our own writing, and indie writers have now taken control. We're starting to notice these things that got by us as common in the publishing world. There's practices, and that's where the sacred cows of publishing come from.
Yes,
those common knowledge things,
which are still there. I mean, and indies. Okay, you're alone. You're doing this by yourself. So indies feel uncomfortable. They're like, okay, maybe there's a way that we should be doing it. Should in air quotes, and they look for it. And so the vestiges are still there, and most of them were designed 40, 50 years ago, and most of them are wrong. So they're not suited for the modern era. I understand the discomfort. It just, you just have to, just like when how uncomfortable you were when you hit publish the first time for your first book. You were excited, but you were scared. That's how business is too.
Fantastic. Talk to me about these bookshops, this latest venture you've Well, I'm fascinated. How do you fit it all in, firstly? But tell me why and what was the motivation? And everybody's getting out of print bookstores, and you guys are jumping in there.
Yeah,
Well, can you see all the stuff behind us? There's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff. I mean, we're in a room with digests right
solid
here.
digest. Yeah, we're what I'm the CFO of WMG, even though I don't get paid. Kris actually runs it, but Alison Longuera is the publisher, and she actually runs it. And we
Runs
have
the entire company.
Yeah, we have 9 employees, and it's just an ongoing thing. One of the aspects about being the CFO and being really focused on money and being long-term freelance is you always look for new cash streams. That's what indie writers need to be doing too, is always look for new cash streams. And I've always been a collector at heart. About, it was 12, 11 years ago now, it's a long time ago, I got kind of really disgusted with traditional publishing, and I was going to be done. And I had all this stuff, and Kris was complaining that we'd filled this 10-bedroom house with stuff. And so I said, okay, let me go start a little store. So I started a little collectible store, and then I got bored real quick because indie was coming along right at that point, and I wanted to go into the indie world. And so we sold it to our manager. Well, she decided to retire about 3 years ago. And we went, well, let's have WMG, our company, buy it back. And that got a new cash stream going. And then
it was a healthy store.
Yeah.
We live in a tourist town, so she was not doing anything online, and there was a loyal customer base that came in all the time. And so it was a healthy store that we bought.
Yeah, and so we got this. We literally just bought a cash stream, and it didn't have any books in it. So we were talking about putting books in the back. And then we got talking about, well, we still have a lot of stuff. And then we had a good friend die who was a major collector, and I inherited 90% of it. And it took up this gigantic warehouse.
Yeah, he had 2 houses essentially full of stuff, and he was a hoarder. And it was all good stuff.
It was all stuff in plastic bags and expensive stuff. And so I said, well, we got all this room in this warehouse we had rented up front. Let's start a second store there and actually put a bookstore in that. And so it's a collectible store combined with a bookstore. And so we have the collectibles, the toys, the cars, the comic books, and a bookstore. And
you see me sort of making faces because when we started all of this, I was like, I'm going to have this stuff forever. He's 10 years older than me, and I was afraid, if he dies, I'm going to have to deal with all this
she's got to deal with all this
and
stuff.
That's how he started the company in the first place, was me saying, I'm just going to give it to, we have a guy who runs an auction company here, and he doesn't have minimums. I said, I'm just going to give it to him and let him sell it. And somebody got really freaked out.
No, don't do that.
Don't do that.
This stuff's expensive.
Yeah. And so he started this, so I kind of rolled my eyes.
Now,
but the third store
was
I was nagging him about.
Yeah, 2 years ago, a wonderful guy by the name of Sheldon MacArthur, who is known in the mystery world as one of the top experts in mystery, had the Los Angeles Mystery Bookstore, the mystery bookstore in LA. And he had retired and moved up here on the coast to Lincoln City, he and his wife. And they had sold the mystery bookstore, but he knows everybody in the mystery genre. He's been to all the conventions. He went to Frankfurt. He's been to all of the major ones. He knows everybody. And he suddenly was living here in town. Well, just about the time I started my first store out there, he started North by Northwest Books as a hobby, books and antiques. And
to sell his stuff.
And he was doing great. It's a very successful business. He sold it to his manager about 1.5 years ago.
And I was nagging Dean. I said, we got to buy this. We got to buy this. Which is the first time I've ever said we have to buy a bookstore. But yes, we have to buy it.
Yeah, and he wanted to sell it to his manager, give her a try. She failed miserably. And so when she finally went down and couldn't do it anymore, he took the store back over, but he really didn't want it. So we walked in and said, sell it to WMG. So that's how we ended up buying North by Northwest Books, which were the manager, that's a guy by the name of Dan Duvall, is doing a fantastic job with. And he's setting up a program that's going to start small to have indie authors fill out forms online to submit books in. And so as that comes in, watch my website at deanwesleysmith.com as we'll do that, because we're going to be
have paper books
in the bookstore in a tourist town. And
fantastic.
We'll do them on consignment, and it's going to be, he's got it worked out that's going to work for indie authors.
But let me say something about having 3 stores. We would not be doing this if the internet did not exist.
No.
The bookstores really do work in the modern era if you have an online presence. Mm-hmm. But if you don't, then forget it. I mean, that's essentially what happened to the North by Northwest Books, was the woman cut off all internet and everything else, and she couldn't keep the doors open because there wasn't enough foot traffic. At tourist town, you have seasons, and in the off season, there wasn't enough traffic to keep the bookstore alive. And, you know, people, I mean, we were there on Saturday, and I was waiting outside for Dean, and I watched people come out with books that were, you know, because it's used and new, you know, all over the map. You know, they were buying books that would have been out for 10 years. They were buying books that were new, and everybody came out with at least one book, which was really neat.
Fantastic.
Paper books.
You got to have the online presence.
But you have to have the online presence too.
We're online. We are eBay, and we're on Abe. You know, to sell the books that way too. The collectible books sell on Abe and eBay. In fact, in WMG Publishing has 4 eBay major stores, 2 of which are anchor stores on eBay, are major stores on eBay. Okay. And it's because of these other stores. And so it's just more cash streams. Back to the whole point of indie authors have to find cash streams. Often I tell indie authors, look around in your own life and see if you can spot something that could be an extra cash stream for you that wouldn't take your writing time. Doesn't take my writing time. We have employees. And
he goes and plays.
And I get to go play.
He's going to leave me next week to go.
I'm going to go picking. I'm going to go picking for more stuff, as if we need more stuff.
We don't need more stuff.
And you've hit on it there, because I know people who are listening will be thinking about time, and you know, so you've got it managed by other people when it comes to the stores. Can you talk to me a little bit though about how you manage everything else, because it's still an enormous workload that you're managing between the two of you? Just literally, how does the day unfold? When do you do the writing? When do you do the other stuff? How do you know, you talk about it being a big house? Are you at furthest ends of the house?
We are.
Yeah. And you don't talk to each other until 6 o'clock in the evening or something, or, you know?
Well, we don't get up at the same time. I go to bed before he does. So he has some time where he's just by himself. I get up earlier, so there's time when I'm by myself. He tends to roam, so he's usually not here during the day. But I'm a lot more structured. I get up, I do the breakfast thing, I check all the email and social media stuff, and then I go to work. And then I exercise. Writers, trust me, the reason I was saying to Dean the other day, I have never had carpal tunnel. I've never had any of that stuff, and I've been doing this for 40 years because I always get up and walk around and I exercise on a regular. I take an hour out of my day to go exercise.
What do you do? What kind of exercise?
I run now, but the reason I run is because I have a Fitbit and I wanted to hit 10,000 steps, and I discovered I'm a time person. So I realized, you know, it takes me an hour and a half to get 10,000 steps if I walk, but if I run, it takes me a half an hour. So, you know, that's what I ended up doing. I trained myself to run to get my 10,000 steps, but I'm numbers oriented that way, not with the other stuff. So, you know, and then we get together for dinner and go back on our separate ways. By the time he's really getting fired up, I'm into my reading phase of the night. I don't read until I'm done writing. And I'm kind of into relaxation, which can cause some issues because suddenly he's excited about something and he's like, we need to do this. And I'm like, I'm going to bed. And he's like, no, we need to do this. I'm like, no, I'm going to bed.
Yeah, I stay up until usually about 6 in the morning, between 5 and 6 in the morning. And she's already long in bed. And so I have the whole where nobody calls, there's no business to do, there's nothing. So when people are following my blog, I blog every day. I haven't missed a day now for 4.5 years, where I put a blog up every day. Sometimes it's just a filler blog saying, I'm still here, I'm still alive, don't worry, this is just a filler. But often I'll talk about something or a workshop or a sacred cow post. I just did another one a couple days ago. But yeah, they're just, I have all that time. And so I can get quite a bit of writing done, you know, between 2 and 6 in the morning when it's dead quiet.
And do you sleep at all, or you know?
Yeah, no, I stay hours. Yeah, I don't crawl out of bed until 1 or 2 in the afternoon.
Okay, gotcha.
And that's so. This is early for me. I just grabbed a bit of breakfast and we're doing this. So this is the first part of my day today. And then I'll go out and do business stuff and go to WMG and hit the bookstores and hit the stuff that to see what's going on, and then probably do some workshop stuff this evening and then into my writing tonight.
Yes, he does writing last. I do it first.
Yeah. I do it when when I don't have critical voice turned on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do too. That's why I do it first.
Yeah.
We're different people, different ways of doing things. But you're right about time.
No, time is everything.
We have a conference that we put on here in the Oregon coast that's coming up at the end of October, which we call the Business Masterclass. And this year's theme is actually time. Because it's set up for indies who are already doing stuff, who are already well into this. I mean, we have people, New York Times bestsellers and everything coming this week, and everybody has been, as we've been prepping for it, we've been talking about how we don't have enough time to do everything we need to do. I mean, even with 9 employees, we don't have enough time.
We don't have enough time.
One of our major employees had a meltdown, about 3 weeks ago, going, I don't have enough time to do everything. We're like, neither do we. We just have to prioritize. And, that's the thing. You got to shrug at some point and say, okay, what do I want for my career? What's the most important thing? And when you're talking writer to writer, the most important thing is new work. New work. That's why he says, I don't count things. I don't. And I kind of feel like I'm a shark. I just move forward all the time. But that's where the interest is. And that's what readers want. You have to keep the old stuff alive. You have to kind of refresh it. And, make sure the covers don't look like you designed them in 2010, with PowerPoint. Well, I did a lot of that. You did. And we're still refreshing some of them. We're still refreshing some of them, yeah. But you have to then do the new work. And, that's the important thing. So if you keep that focus on new work, keep writing, that does clear out a lot of you must do this and you must do that. In order to be successful, you have to do this and you do that. Yeah. Because you were right at the start of this. It changes every 6 months or so. We've run this business masterclass now for how many years, Dan? Oh, it's been 4 or 5, 6 years now. 6, 7 years. And every year we sit down with last year's notes and throw them away. Throw them away. Because they're irrelevant. They're outdated already. Things are moving so fast. The thing that I really talk to writers about a lot is don't follow trends. It'll just drive you crazy. Just do what's right for you. And if something hits and say, oh, that's a good idea, and it kind of hits where you think it's a good idea, then chase that, for a little while. But if it's getting in the way of your writing, eject it. Just get the books out, get them out to readers, and then go on. That's why, I have published in the last 4 years, 50 some novels, 3.5, 4 years, 50 some novels. All of them have been stealth published. It's just, we put them out and there they are. And, and I have series of 10 and 12 books in some of my series, and we haven't had the time yet to go and say, okay, now let's really push that. Mm-hmm. Well, at some point we will. Get there. We'll get there at some point. But I wanted to write them first. Yep. And here's what indies absolutely need to do. They need to write. Yep. They need to publish what they write. Yep. They need to have a static website, meaning a website that it doesn't have to have blogs every day or anything else. It just needs to talk about what they're doing. If a new book comes out, they need to have it on there. They need to have a bibliography on there, and they need to have a contact form. And that's it. A reading order if you're writing in a series. And that's all you need. And an account on Facebook, because a lot of people contact us through Facebook and things like that. Yeah, you need the Facebook thing, and you need to have your Amazon page updated now, because Amazon promotes everything. They have the new book, and then they have the Amazon page, and if you don't have it, it's kind of disappointing. But that's it. You don't need to do any of the other stuff. I mean, it's nice to do it. It helps sometimes, and it doesn't help at other times. But if you're all freaked out about all this other stuff that everybody says, you have to do it, no. You have to write. You need a static website and a place to be contacted. You need to let your readers, think about readers. Readers want to know, where's the next book? What's the next book? Make that information easy for them to find, and that's all you need to do.
What's the biggest mistake you see people making?
Not writing. They write one book and then they go and promote it. I mean, there are writers out there. There are writing gurus out there who have written 5 books and have become famous for giving advice. And, all they do is they keep flogging the same 5 books. They're going to go away in 2 or 3 years. No, right? Keep writing. I mean, that's how we've had these long careers. Is we kept writing through the good times and the bad times. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I see is turning your writing into work.
You know, I write one draft, clean, one copy, and release. I never look at it again. And it's just a train yourself to do that, you know, because the second drafts and the third drafts, those are drudgery. They're work. They take a lot of time. Why write sloppy? I don't understand why anybody writes sloppy when they're writing a draft. Write clean, write one, tell the story you want to tell, and then release it.
Trust your own inner writer voice. You're a good storyteller. You learn storytelling and in the womb, basically. And
so there's a lot of reasons why writers, in fact, you mentioned, you said you go to work. It's how we deal with writing. I never call my writing work. It's just not work. Sitting alone in a room and making stuff up, it's not work. I'm sorry. I've had real jobs. I know what real work is. That's not work. That's just sitting alone in a room and making stuff up and telling myself a story. I entertain myself, and I write books that I want to read, and that's all I do. That's just not work. So I keep it in that way. I understand the need to have it validated, especially with family and friends, and especially if you're making some money off of your writing. It needs to have, you know, you need, oh, that's my work, validation. Well, no, you're just sitting alone in a room making stuff up. And the minute you start attaching all the drudgery of work into your writing, then you will eventually go away, because you just won't keep it up. And it'll slow down, and your books will get farther and farther apart, and you just won't have fun with it. So when people ask me, well, like, for example, in July, I had a challenge that I've always wanted to do, because I've studied the old the old pulp writers. I think they're fascinating people. And so, you know, I thought, oh, how did they do that? How were they writing that many books? How was people that we still read, you know, Earl Stanley Gardner and Doc Savage and Louis L'Amour and all those people, how were they writing those books? And I looked at it and went, oh, I'm gonna try it. So I wrote 4 books in July, just to see if I could do it. 4 novels.
It's easier to rewrite on computer than it was on manual typewriter,
and so
which is why those guys did clean first drafts.
Yeah, and so I've trained myself to do clean first drafts. So I have 4 novels. They're all out now, or will be. I think the last one's out. Literally, I wrote them in July, and they'll all be out here by October. And I couldn't have done that in any other world. And if I called my writing work, that would have been the worst month of my life. And yet, that was probably one of the funnest months I had writing, because I was just focused on it all the time, having fun, telling 4 different, 4 novels, and one right after another, one a week. And it was just I had a blast that.
You did.
I was in a better mood the whole month.
He was.
Because I never once associated work to my writing. And so that's the biggest mistake I see.
That's not to say that he didn't have ups and downs, because you're always in your own head as a writer. Yeah. So, I mean, in between those books, he was always, when he was getting toward the end of the first one, then he would be like, oh, what am I doing next? What am I doing next? And I have learned over the years to just let him go, and he'll figure it out. You know, before I used to be like, well, we could do this, or you could do this, or no, that's just part of his process. But it is writing. I don't care what you're doing. It's, up and down, no matter what. So,
because
just ride the waves and go with it. Yeah. You can't ask for a more fun job, really.
Yeah.
It's so true. And sometimes we take ourselves far too seriously.
Oh, yeah. I don't do that with my writing. I just it's just fun.
Great. Okay, I'm going to have to let you go, unfortunately. Just as a last question, can I ask each of you to kind of make a prediction as to what you think is coming down the track for writers that for indies that we should be aware of?
Oh boy, I think that we're in the transition period right now. We started off with the gold rush, and then we're out of that gold rush, and we're into the writers who are going to make it are the ones that are writing consistently, putting stuff out consistently, trying new marketing things, being prolific. I think we are in the second pulp era, basically. The first one was back in the 30s and 40s and 20s. We're now in that second era where productivity is everything. So I see the writers that will be surviving and going forward will be the productive ones, the ones that actually can produce work and have fun with it and get it out. And then I see traditional publishing fading back considerably. Hopefully we can help train the newer writers to not give their books to New York and to the major traditional publishers by selling all rights. That's, it's a problem. And I see the biggest worry that we have coming forward is the evaluation of intellectual property, which is our copyrights, our work. In the last 10 years, the valuation of intellectual property has become a major area, and I think writers need to pay attention, because you can get in trouble in estates if you leave a lot of writing to your estate and the probate values it at worth over 70 years of its life, is going to be worth X amount of hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. Suddenly, the poor people you left it to are bankrupt because they have to pay the taxes.
Every country is different.
Yeah, every country is different. But you can get into problem there. The evaluation of what your copyright is actually worth is going to become a major, major issue, and it's not settled yet. There's about 8 or 9 that the courts around the world are using, 8 or 9 ways to value intellectual property. And this has only come up in the last 10 years, about the same time as indie. And so I see that becoming a major focus. We got to start paying attention to the fact that we create intellectual property.
It's so very interesting you're saying that. I was just talking to somebody today about WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, about that very topic. So I think you're absolutely right. Yeah,
I think that's coming forward. That's a problem we're all going to start getting more and more aware of as it goes forward. Kris and I are already on top of it and trying to pay attention a lot. But it's both an interesting, fascinating, and scary area. So it's something writers need to learn copyright.
Yes,
and intellectual property. Yeah.
And speaking of that, I think one of the things that's going to be happening, there's 2 things. First, the writers who are working as indies right now, we all grew up in traditional publishing. Yeah. And so we still have some of those old vestiges, but there's a whole generation of writers now who are starting into indie publishing. They're getting out of college, they want to do this, and they don't have any of that. So they're going to be kind of fearless, and they're going to go and do things that the rest of us are like, ooh, who knew you could do that? Mm-hmm. They're going to be more business-minded, mm-hmm. and they're going to be a lot more adventurous. So we need to keep an eye on them, not to hold them back, but to learn from them. The other thing is that our industry is not the only industry that's been disrupted by the internet. Movies have, television has, music industry was the first major disruption in the creative arts. Gaming,
department stores.
Yes, everything.
Everything.
They're being disrupted. And so what that means is that subsidiary rights, those extra rights that mm-hmm. you sell, are going to be easier to license, but you have to kind of pay attention to how you're going to do it. And also you may want to figure out whether you want to hang on to them yourself. Do you want to make a movie out of your own book and put it through YouTube, which is how so many people are getting started now. Actors in particular, young actors are now making their own movies and putting them out on YouTube. And I mean, I know a young actor who got an offer for a network television series and turned it down because he was making so much money on his YouTube show. So, these are the kind of things that we got to start thinking about as writers. As we learn copyright, as we learn about subsidiary rights, and we figure out what we want to do, how much time do you have? I license my rights and translations right now with a term limit, because I hope down the road we will have a translation department at WMG. But right now we don't. So I still want the books out there in other languages. So I license them for a couple of years while I'm waiting for things to change. And you got to start having those kind of game plans as a writer and figuring out, if that's what you want to do. Do you just not want to think about it right now, or, move forward?
Think long term.
Always think long term. And not just your life. If you have heirs, you should have heirs of some kind, if nothing else, just a charity. They're going to deal with your copyright too. So you shouldn't be thinking about your life. You should be thinking about the life of the project.
Yeah.
Long term. That's where we started. That's where we'll finish. Thank you both so much for everything you do for all of us. You share all your wisdom all the time, and it really is invaluable. So thank you on behalf of everybody that has read and enjoyed and profited from your work. And thank you for all the great writing and the great fiction that keeps on coming. And thank you indeed for doing this for our Indie Author Fringe this time. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay, take care. Enjoy your writing day.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye.
Bye.